Welcome back to another exciting journey on Waleed Entertainments. I'm Waleed, and today we're embarking on a new adventure, one that hides within the pages of history but is crucial to understand. If you're a fan of history and biographies, make sure to stick around until the end. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story.
All right, so are you ready to dive into the world of Imran Khan? We're going to use his Wikipedia entry to really get to know him, like what makes him tick, from his early life in Lahore all the way to, leading Pakistan. There's a lot to cover, and I think you'll especially be interested to hear about those custom shoes that he had that became a viral trend. Talk about an unexpected influence.
Yeah, it's true. His life is a really interesting blend of sports politics and social impact, but it's also really closely connected to the history of Pakistan itself.
Exactly. So let's start at the beginning with his roots. Born in Lahore in 1952 to an upper middle class family. So it's not exactly a rags to riches story. But the family tree is where things get interesting.
Yeah, it really shows how complex Pakistani society is. Like, on one hand, you've got his lineage connecting him to people like Haibat Khan Niasi, who was a really important general in the 16th century. But then on the other hand, there's also this strong history of cricket in his family too, especially on his mother's side with the Burki tribe who, had members who played for Pakistan.
It's like he was meant for greatness, right? But in what field? Okay, so we all know about his education at fancy places like Aitchison College and Oxford. But I found something that really surprised me. Apparently, he worked odd jobs while he was studying at Oxford. Not exactly what you'd expect from someone with his background.
Yeah, it really shows his resourcefulness and maybe even, a little bit of his independent spirit early on. Those experiences, like washing dishes or cutting cheese, it probably gave him a totally different outlook on life than his wealthier classmates had.
And maybe even, fueled that drive to succeed on his own terms. It makes that move to his cricket career even more interesting. He just explodes onto the scene at 16. You've been following cricket for a while. You know how rare that is. But it wasn't just raw talent, was it? There was just something about his style, beyond just being fast and aggressive that really captured people's attention.
Definitely. He brought this fierce intensity to every match, both as a bowler and a batsman. He was known for that relentless pace and his ability to swing the ball late, which made him so difficult to face, even for the best batsman in the world. And with the bat, he was just as aggressive, known for hitting the ball really hard and, taking risks. He was captivating to watch.
It's interesting, though, he didn't just stay in Pakistan. He went on to play for Worcestershire and Sussex in England and gained some valuable international experience.
Yeah, that was a big move for him. It exposed him to different playing styles, and he got to improve his skills against some of the best players in the world. It definitely broadened his horizons and probably even shaped his leadership style, too.
And then, of course, there's that legendary moment, leading Pakistan to victory in the 1992 World Cup. I mean, that must have been an unbelievable feeling, not just for him, but for the entire country.
It was way more than just a win. It was this huge cultural moment. Pakistan was still a relatively new country back then, and they were really looking for a moment on the world stage. And Khan, with all his charisma and determination he gave them it really cemented his place as a national hero, and I think it laid the groundwork for his future political ambitions.
And speaking of seeing things early on, there's that story about him commentating in 1994 and calling out ball tampering. This was years before it became a major controversy. He was already speaking his mind about fairness and sportsmanship.
Yeah, that's an early glimpse of his strong convictions that would become a defining part of his career. Both on and off the field, he never backed down from saying what he thought, even when it went against popular opinion.
And that brings us to a big shift. From all the cheering crowds to something completely different, philanthropy. What made him change directions like that? It seems so far removed from the intense world of international cricket.
This is where his personal life and his political life really come together. When he lost his mother to cancer, it really affected him, and he decided to turn that grief into action. That's when he founded the Shaukat Khanum Memorial Cancer Hospital, in memory of his mother. But it wasn't just about building a hospital.
Right, this wasn't just some celebrity attaching their name to a cause. He was really hands-on, determined to provide free cancer treatment to people who couldn't afford it. That was a pretty radical idea, especially in a country like Pakistan, where healthcare is a big problem.
Exactly, and the people of Pakistan really connected with it. Here was this national hero using his fame and fortune to address a real problem in society. It wasn't just charity, it was a statement about social justice and equality.
And he didn't stop there. The Normal College, the Imran Khan Foundation, he kept pushing to tackle issues like education and rural development. These weren't just side projects. This was laying the foundation for something much bigger.
And this is where we start to see the seeds of his political ambition. Here's a guy who's already found success in sports and philanthropy. So why politics? What was it about Pakistan at the time that made this feel like the next challenge for Khan?
That's a great question. Let's dig into that political journey in part two, shall we? Okay, so we've got Imran Khan, the cricket hero turned, philanthropist. But now it's 1996, and he's starting his own political party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, or PTI. What was the political scene like back then, and what was he getting himself into?
Well, Pakistan in the 90s was dealing with a lot of problems like corruption, economic instability, and people were just really disillusioned with the traditional politicians. It felt like there was this void, this need for change, and Khan, with his clean image and his message of reform, really tapped into that.
But he wasn't an overnight success, was he? His first few years in politics were kind of a mixed bag, weren't they?
That's true. His election to the National Assembly in 2002 was a big step, but his initial support for General Musharraf's coup, kind of raised some eyebrows. It seemed to contradict his whole anti-establishment stance, and a lot of people questioned his judgment.
You mentioned something in your note about wanting to understand the establishment better. It always feels like this mysterious force behind everything. Who are they, and what role do they play in Pakistani politics?
It's a term that people use to describe this powerful network of military and intelligence officials who have a lot of influence behind the scenes. They've been really important in shaping Pakistan's history, often getting involved in political matters, and Khan's relationship with them has been complicated and full of tensions.
So it's like this constant tug of war between the civilian government and the military. And Khan seems to have navigated it in his own way, eventually becoming a big critic of Musharraf and gaining popularity as this populist leader.
His message really resonated with the people. He talked about getting rid of corruption, empowering the poor, and creating a Naya Pakistan, a new Pakistan free from the problems of the past.
And that takes us to 2018, this pivotal year when he finally becomes prime minister. The whole world was watching. There were accusations of vote reading, of course, but it was still a historic moment.
Absolutely. It was the culmination of decades of struggle and a real testament to his persistence, but the real challenge was just beginning. Governing a country as complicated as Pakistan is no easy task, especially with all the problems he inherited.
Let's talk about those challenges. There was the COVID-19 pandemic, which obviously affected every country in the world. How did his government deal with that unprecedented crisis? I remember reading something about smart lockdowns.
Right, those were a big part of Pakistan's initial response. The idea was to focus on specific areas with high infection rates, but at the same time try to keep the economy going as much as possible. And they actually got praise from organizations like the World Health Organization for using their existing infrastructure for fighting polio to help combat the spread of the virus.
It's amazing how those unexpected connections can pop up in times of crisis. But COVID wasn't the only thing he had to worry about. We know about his passion for the environment. Those initiatives were really important to him during his time in office, right?
Yeah, the Billion Tree Tsunami Project was one of his signature initiatives. The goal was to plant 1 billion trees across Pakistan to fight deforestation and, promote conservation. It aligned with his personal beliefs about protecting the environment, but it also addressed a critical issue for Pakistan's future.
It's really interesting how those personal passions can turn into actual policies. But then there's the issue of terrorism, which Pakistan has been struggling with for a long time. The relationship with the Taliban is especially complex. You mentioned that you wanted to understand this better. How did Khan handle this delicate situation?
It was a really tricky situation. He tried to have dialogue and make peace with the Afghan Taliban because he saw them as a key player in regional stability. But a lot of people criticized his approach, saying he was being too soft on them, especially those who saw the Taliban as a terrorist organization.
It just shows how hard it is for leaders to find the right balance in these kinds of situations, weighing diplomacy against security concerns. And it seems like Khan wasn't afraid to take a strong stance even on controversial topics. You mentioned his call to ban blasphemy against Islam internationally. That definitely got people's attention.
It did. It was a bold move rooted in his strong religious beliefs. He argued that the world needed to do more to protect the sanctity of Islam. But some people saw it as an attempt to limit free speech and control religious discussions.
It goes to show how personal beliefs can shape a leader's actions on the world stage. But his time as prime minister wasn't all smooth sailing, was it? Now, the Tosha Khanna case, you marked this in your notes as something you wanted to understand better. It's a bit of a complicated situation, but at its heart, what was Khan actually accused of doing, and why did this specific issue become such a big deal?
Okay, so the Tosha Khanna is basically like a government storage place for gifts that public officials get from foreign leaders. Khan was accused of not properly disclosing gifts that he received while in office and then making money by selling them, which is against the law in Pakistan. It raised a lot of questions about transparency and accountability, and it just looked really bad.
So it wasn't just about a few souvenirs then. There were allegations of, luxury watches, jewelry, even a really valuable wristwatch that he got from the Saudi crown prince. It sounds like the kind of thing that could really damage a politician's reputation.
Exactly, and it fed into this bigger story that his opponents were creating a story that portrayed him as someone who was above the law even though he claimed to be fighting corruption.
And all of this leads to his dramatic removal from office in 2022 through that no confidence vote. It was a crazy time full of accusations and political maneuvering. What were the main reasons that led to his downfall?
Well, there were a few things going on. People criticized how he was handling the economy, inflation was going up, and there was this feeling that he was losing control. He also kind of pushed away some key allies both within his own party and in the military establishment.
And he didn't go down without a fight, did he? He claimed there was this U.S.-led conspiracy to get rid of him. How much truth is there to those claims, and what was the reaction from the international community?
Khan has always been very critical of U.S. foreign policy, especially things like drone strike in Pakistan. He saw his removal from office as part of some bigger plan, a way to put someone in charge who would be easier to control. But there's really no solid evidence to back up those claims.
It's just another reminder that Pakistani politics is never simple. There are always hidden agendas, shifting alliances, and things are never quite what they seem. And this is where things take a darker turn. That assassination attempt in Wazirabad in 2022. That must have been terrifying for him and his supporters.
It was a shocking event. Khan was leading a protest when suddenly shots rang out and he got hit in the leg. It really showed how volatile the political climate was and how dangerous things had become for him as an opposition leader.
And his response was to blame specific people within the government and intelligence agencies, right? How did they react, and what impact did the attack have on the political landscape?
The government denied any involvement, calling it a cowardly act by a lone wolf, but Khan's supporters saw it as proof that there was a conspiracy against him. The whole thing just made the country even more divided and deepened the mistrust between Khan and his opponents.
And that's really just the beginning of his premiership journey. We'll dive into all the legal battles, the Al-Qadir trust case, and all the controversies that keep swirling around him in Part 3. It's a story that's still unfolding, and it really reveals a lot about how complex Pakistani politics is and the enduring appeal of this charismatic and controversial figure. So we left off with that assassination attempt on Imran Khan, right? Adding another layer to this already dramatic story. It just shows how high the stakes are in Pakistani politics.
Yeah, that's for sure. And the way Khan reacted by blaming specific people in the government and intelligence services, it just poured fuel on the fire, you know? It made those tensions even worse.
It's like he has this way of turning setbacks into fuel for his movement. It almost strengthens his image as this defiant leader taking on the system. But what about the Al-Qadir trust case? This one seems really important to understanding what he's been going through since he left office. It's pretty tangled, but you're really good at untangling these things.
Well, at its heart, it's about allegations of corruption that happened during Khan's time as prime minister. He and his wife were accused of using their positions to make money from a settlement with a wealthy property developer. They supposedly fuddled the money through the Al-Qadir Trust.
So it's like that classic story, the people in power using their influence to enrich themselves.
Exactly, and it really clashed with that image Khan had built for himself as this crusader against corruption.
And then there was that dramatic arrest at the Islamabad High Court in May 2023. It felt like a major turning point.
Oh, it definitely sent shockwaves through the country, seeing paramilitary forces arresting a former prime minister. That was pretty striking, to say the least. The charges were related to the Al-Qadir trust case, specifically things like corruption, money laundering, and abuse of power.
You mentioned in your notes that you wanted to understand how the public reacted to all of this. Pakistan has a history of political protests, so I imagine things got pretty heated.
Oh, absolutely. Khan's supporters were convinced that the arrest was politically motivated, that it was just a way to silence him. Protests broke out all over the country, and some of them turned violent. There were clashes with the police property damage. The government even had to bring in the army to try and restore order in some places.
It really shows how strongly his supporters believe in him. They see him as this symbol of hope, against a system that they see as corrupt. But the legal troubles didn't stop there, did they?
No, they didn't. More charges kept coming. He was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison for the Lettergate affair, which involved leaking state secrets. And then there was the Toshakana case, which got him another 14 years, though that sentence was later suspended while he appealed it.
Wow, it's hard to keep track of it all. And then on top of that, there was that 7-year sentence for supposedly breaking Islamic marriage laws with his wife. What was that all about?
Well, it came from accusations that his marriage to Bushra Bibi didn't follow the rules of Islam about the waiting period after a divorce. His supporters saw it as just another way for the establishment to attack him using personal and religious reasons.
It's like every part of his life became a battleground. But even with all that going on, his supporters stayed loyal. In fact, it seems like their numbers even grew. How did he manage to maintain that support while facing so much adversity?
Khan was very effective at portraying himself as a martyr, as a victim of a vengeful establishment that was trying to shut him up. He used every opportunity he had, even from prison, to speak out against the government, the military, and what he called the imported government of Shahbaz Sharif.
And there were those worries about how he was being treated in prison, right? Allegations that he wasn't getting proper medical care and that the conditions were really bad.
Yes, his legal team and his family raised those concerns, and international human rights groups also condemned the situation. It just added to this idea that he was being unfairly targeted and persecuted.
So from cricket star to philanthropist to prime minister and now a political prisoner, it's almost like something out of a Shakespeare play. But there's another twist, right? He eventually gets released from prison.
That's right. In June 2024, the Islamabad High Court overturned his conviction in the Lettergate case, and a month after that, his conviction in the marriage case was also overturned. Those were big wins for Khan and his supporters, and it made their claims of political persecution seem even stronger.
It shows how resilient he is, his ability to bounce back from all these setbacks. But he still has to deal with a bunch of other legal challenges, right? It just seems to go on and on.
It does. He's definitely not in the clear yet. He's still caught up in this web of legal battles with several cases still pending, and the government is still trying to suppress his party. They're arresting leaders and supporters and making it hard for them to hold rallies.
So what's next for Imran Khan? What's his ultimate goal, and how will all of this affect Pakistani politics in the long run?
That's the big question, isn't it? He seems really determined to get back into power to lead PTI to victory in the next election. But whether he can pull it off is another story.
This deep dive has been quite a journey. The cricket pitch to the halls of power and now the courtroom. We've covered so much, but one thing's for sure, Imran Khan is a force to be reckoned with.
He's such a complex figure. He stirs up strong feelings, both good and bad. Some people see him as a visionary leader, and others call him a populist demagogue. But there's no denying that he's had a huge impact on Pakistani society and politics.
And his story is far from over. There's so much more to explore, to analyze, to debate. We've really just scratched the surface here. I encourage you to keep digging into those aspects of his life that you find most interesting.
Absolutely. Whether you're interested in his political ideas, his charity work, or all the controversies that surround him, there's a ton of information out there. This deep dive has hopefully given you a good starting point, but it's up to you to dig deeper and come to your own conclusions about this fascinating and enigmatic figure.
It's been great unpacking all of this with you. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep diving deep.
We've had today, unraveling the threads of history that connect us all. If you found this tale as intriguing as I did, please give it a thumbs up and share your insights in the comments. Your thoughts enrich our community. Remember to subscribe to Waleed Entertainments for more captivating stories, ensuring our adventures continue seamlessly. I'm excited for our next exploration together. Until then, take care and keep your curiosity alive.